Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Myth. So today we're going to continue the series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and you know what time it is. It's the last Thursday of the month. This month blew by quickly, and it's time for the MiSTer FPGA News Roundup. Because MiSTer had another awesome month in April, so many fun things happened, and we're going to go through all of them so you don't miss anything. Before we get too far involved though, big thanks to today's sponsor, MiSTer Add-ons. He sponsors all the Thursday videos. I use all his hardware to capture this series over the last 4.5 years, and he's also a big Kurt Russell fan, so honestly, you can feel pretty safe knowing that. Getting right involved, we get the Sega Saturn core updates. We've had so many awesome updates in the month of April. They are coming basically like every week at least. We've gotten improvements in some of what I would consider the Sega Saturn's best games, like Symphony of the Night here, keeping some of the freezing at a minimum or completely removing it. And if you've never played this version of Symphony of the Night, I can't recommend it enough. We've also got other games working like Revolution X. If you ever wondered, yes, Aerosmith did get their own arcade game. It did get ported to Sega Saturn, and it now works on MiSTer FPGA. But one of the month's biggest things is getting snack support for the analog controllers. Obviously, not many games on the Sega Saturn support full analog controls, but the ones that do are just made better for it, and we're getting snack support for those in the core now. That is always awesome to see, getting more control options, and hopefully maybe in May we get light gun support so we can play some House of the Dead or some Virtual Cop or Corpse Killer and enjoy some of that fun as well. But other games like Battle Garega here got some improvements on the 2D planes in the background, so this core is constantly being updated. It's constantly getting new and improved games, and we're getting closer and closer to the finish line. It's going to be weird one day when I don't have any Sega Saturn testing videos to show you guys, but so many games are absolutely incredible. Even Resident Evil, as the zombie stumbles stupidly into the corner. Has anyone ever actually seen that happen? It's the only time I've ever seen it. Not sure if it's MiSTer or just the Saturn being dumb, but that was news to me, so tell me down below if that's ever happened to you. But there's so many great games on the Sega Saturn, so many hidden gems, and so many of them are infinitely playable on the current core. It's so much fun to follow along with the progress, but do be aware that if you're on the current update all core, that is now outdated. You want to do manual installation from the MiSTer FPGA Unstable Nightly's channel, and I'll have a testing video exclusively on Panzer Dragoon Saga coming up soon, because this is the #1 game you guys have been asking me to check out, so I will have that in a future video. But everything on the Sega Saturn front is looking incredible. We've gotten so many updates from SRG 320. The core keeps getting better every single time, and that's just a ton of fun. Now moving over to the Nintendo 64 side of things, the core came out in update all this month, so if you haven't updated your MiSTer yet, now is the time to do so. And before you get confused, because it seems to trip everyone up, the standard core is on update all. The turbo core is still manual installation from the test channels page on MiSTer FPGA Discord server, so do be aware that you need to manually install that. And I've been doing a lot of testing videos on turbo, and it's been absolutely spectacular. And I've got a whole host of videos made and lined up to show you more of what this core can do on the turbo and regular side, and a lot of other fun. Because this is finished, but it is still so much more testing to be done. There's so much fun to have, so much to show you, so many comparisons to draw. But the big news is the core is out in update all this month, and it's doing so well. And games that seem to struggle, something like Resident Evil 2, seem to be 100% playable on the turbo core. I'll have a testing series on this as well, but some games that people thought weren't playable or weren't completable have been found to be 100% playable on the turbo side of things, but more to come in that in May. And it's now comparison time as well. I've already published a MiSTer FPGA versus Ares emulator side by side, and I will soon have a Mupen 64 one for you as well. And I think I'll even compare MiSTer FPGA to the Nintendo NSO offerings, because I will say right now, MiSTer mops the floor with Nintendo's own emulation. But it's been so fun to follow along with this core. It is wrapped up work-wise, and I'll probably have another 8 to 10 videos before it stops appearing on the channel. But if there's anything in particular you want to see, do let me know. And if you are new to the core, remember I have a controller guide on the channel as well, using original controllers, using adapters, using new controllers. A lot of awesome innovations have been made by members of the MiSTer FPGA community as far as how to get your controllers into the core. So if you need any help with that and you want to get those original controllers running, definitely check that out in my playlist. If I remember, I'll leave a link below, but 99 out of 100 times I do forget to do that after I say it. But if you haven't started playing the Nintendo 64 core yet on MiSTer FPGA, you are 100% missing out. It's been such a pleasure doing all of these previews, and trust me, I still have a lot more fun to come. But over the last year, this channel's been so much Nintendo 64 testing, and I've had an absolutely metric crap ton of fun doing the whole thing. Now moving over to the arcade side of things, Wickerwaka has updated the Irem M92 core, kind of converging two different cores into one and rewriting some of the CPU elements. This means that Irem M92 is getting even better on MiSTer FPGA, and that is absolutely incredible because this board has some of my favorite arcade games of all time on it, and we really haven't talked about it in a while. And a funny story, I did a review on this and I forgot to run it, so I'm going to redo the review once Wickerwaka is done with the new version of the core. But if you haven't played any of the Irem M92 games yet, the original core and the turbo core are still a spectacular way to do that. But if you want to start testing the work in progress core, it's on the Irem M92 page on MiSTer FPGA Discord server, and I can't recommend checking it out enough. Not only is it a fun time, but if you do find any bugs, report them to Wickerwaka. It helps him develop the core, and it helps you get more accurate versions of some hilarious games like Ninja Baseball Batman. And the best part is, it is still the turbo core as well, so you get so many improvements in games like In the Hunt. On the standard core and on real hardware, this game chugs harder than a frat boy on a Friday night at a state college. On the turbo core, it definitely improves almost everything, giving you such a smoother experience in playing this game. And Wickerwaka is going to have some more updates on other Irem boards, but honestly, M92 is where 9 out of 10 of the best games made by Irem live, so this is still the most exciting stuff. And again, just getting this turbo implementation is so good. Not that In the Hunt wasn't playable on the standard core or on real hardware, but it definitely would slow down pretty terribly in spots, so having that 100% alleviated is just an absolute blast, and it's a quality of life improvement everyone should be happy for. And I can't wait to see what Wickerwaka has in store for the other Irem cores. Hopefully those might show some signs of life in May, and if they do, I will definitely run a video on them as well as include them in the news. But Irem M92 is continually getting work, and it's going to be even better than ever. Now staying on arcade side of things, but moving over to Jotego, he released 4 different new games running on the Namco System 1 core, or the JT House core as he calls it, because the first game that ran on it was Splatterhouse. And I honestly still think of all the games on the Namco System 1 board, Splatterhouse is the best, but having 4 new shmups is a ton of fun. And if you haven't seen yet, I did a video on this on Monday. I will leave a link in the description below. And it's always fun to get new arcade games, and Jotego and his team are constantly publishing more, and it is just great to have more options on MiSTer FPGA. And 3 of the 4 of these being Tate or vertical shmups gives you more reason to turn your TV on its side if you have a CRT television. That's always a fun time as well. There's definitely something to love here for everyone. I wouldn't say any of these are Namco's best games of all time, but they are solid B-tier fun, and getting 4 new games in one dump is always a good time. Just be aware that you do need to be a member of Jotego's Patreon to get the beta key to run these. They are still in beta, they're not public yet, but honestly giving him like $3 or $4 a month to get access to some awesome games is really a cheap value. And if these games are in beta, you'd be very hard pressed to know, because I really couldn't find anything in the performance, the sound, or the graphical capabilities that made me think these were anything other than running one-to-one with real hardware. There's no glaring issues, and that's always a fun time. And speaking of Jotego cores, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles has come into the public repo, so if you update your MiSTer FPGA now and you're not a Patreon member, you will be able to play this game, and that's absolutely awesome. It's one of Konami's most iconic arcade games, whether or not you love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and if you grew up loving them like I did, it's even more fun to play this game. And while I did review this in beta back in last year when it came out, I don't think I'm going to re-review it again, because honestly, not a lot changes. But if you go ahead and update your MiSTer and you're not a Patreon member, you'll be able to play this game today, and it's one more awesome arcade core on MiSTer FPGA. And I'm sure Jotego will start making some of the other cores that are still in beta public throughout the year, so when that happens, I'll definitely let you know. Now moving over to the AO486 core, there is a new OPL3 implementation on the sound side of things, which is going to be a fun time, and the 486 core has been getting a lot of love lately. Last month we talked about the 0 MHz MHz collection, a new way to launch and play pre-configured games on MiSTer FPGA, and I do have a little bit more testing of that coming up soon on the channel, just not sure when I'm going to run it. And I know not everyone plays the DOS core, but there is a lot of fun here, and getting new implementations is always a good time, because back in the day there was so much diverse sound hardware as far as DOS computers were concerned. How you remember a game sounding is probably completely different how I remember it sounding, just based upon what sound hardware you had in your computer and whether or not you use something like a MIDI card to be able to get the MIDI audio out of these games. And I'm just showing you some random DOS footage I've not yet used in a video for some fun. But it seems like DOS is getting a lot of love in 2024, when 2023 seemed like a pretty sleepy year on the PC front, and hopefully that means we'll continue to see AO46 improvements in the future. 0 MHz collection definitely keeps adding games to that repo, so you have more fun to play easier on MiSTer FPGA than you ever did before, and now with the new OPL3 build you have more sound options as well, and honestly options on MiSTer FPGA are plentiful and always a good time. And the last bit of news, if you didn't watch the video, we now have a Toki core for MiSTer FPGA as well. This is a hard as nails game. It's definitely a love it or hate it sort of experience, but it's fun to see a new developer come over to MiSTer FPGA because this was their first core on the platform, and it's always fun to see new names come around because the more developers, the more cores you get and the quicker you get them. If you've never played Toki before, I definitely recommend you check it out. Just be prepared to die repeatedly over and over again until you learn absolutely every single one of the game's patterns, because this is late 80s arcade gaming hard, but it's charming, it's fun, and even though this is still a work in progress core, I really can't see anything that makes me think that there is much to be improved whatsoever. Maybe there's a stray pixel here or there somewhere, but I can't find it. And that's all the news for April on the MiSTer FPGA side of things. I'll definitely update the video again in May because I'm expecting another big month, but I would say the two big main takeaways here this month are Sega Saturn keeps improving and it's getting closer to the finish line, and for everyone waiting on Nintendo 64 to hit update all, that happened in the beginning of April and you guys should be playing it now. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, but short of that, that's all the news that's fit to print for April, and I'll see you guys for the next MiSTer FPGA video. Bye bye.